Hello, everybody, and welcome to our community podcast. I'm Kim Martin. I'm not Andy Thornton, the CEO of the YMCA, but I am the founder of I've Decided, which is one of the sponsors of our community, along with the Greater Peoria YMCA. So here with me today is the awesome Trey Chandler. He is the Director of Operations at the YMCA, filling in, helping out with Andy being gone this week. We're going to tackle this podcast ourselves. How you feel about that, Trey?
I'm good with it. I think we'll do a great job.
I think we'll do a great job too. Well, this week I've decided, every week, Trey, we have a topic. Okay. And so we put out this information to our community and we just focus on a special word and how it applies to our lives, our goals, our dreams, and things that we want to accomplish, because that's what we do. And I've decided we help people achieve their goals and dreams.
Of course.
And so this week the word is viable.
Viable. Yes.
This is a great word.
It is. It's a very good word.
Because I think
it's a very important word.
It is a very important word. The definition of viable is capable of living, able to succeed. Right. So you're capable of living, you're able to succeed. So I think it's like thriving.
Yes.
When I think of viable, I think successful, not like surviving, like
right.
you're barely hanging on by a thread.
No. Viable is a sustainable option. It's something that's going to be long-term, something that is work but doesn't feel like it because you put the strategy in place.
Yes, absolutely. And that's funny you talk about strategy, because that's kind of where my mind went. So when I put the content together this week, I'm like, okay, viable. And I know that your goals and dreams, they have to be viable. If your dreams aren't viable, they're not going to survive. You're going to give up on them. You're going to burn yourself out.
Exactly.
So what makes your dreams, your goals viable, capable of living, able to succeed? And the first thing that popped in my head was a good action plan, a strategy,
proper planning,
a map, so to speak,
yes.
A way to get from here to there.
Most definitely.
So the question that we pose to our members that I decided, and I'm going to pose to you, and we're going to have a conversation around, and I'm posing to all of those listening to us out there through this podcast, is how viable is your strategy?
It's a good question.
Because if you are going to achieve your goals and dreams, you have to have a viable strategy.
Indeed.
And you were just saying this was a perfect word for
yes.
you guys at the Y, because you just finished your strategic planning.
Exactly. We've been working on a strategic plan off and on for quite a while. Had some new leadership changes, so we're really getting all those leadership roles filled. So we had the right people around the table first,
right,
to make the strategy an actual viable one. And we actually have finally finished it, got it approved about a month ago, and we're working through that process now. So
that's awesome. So there you go. So you've been working on your strategy, and I just, I can't stress it enough. No, it doesn't matter what your goal is, from the smallest goal to the largest goal. You have to focus on the steps that you need to take to get there.
I tell all of my staff, all of my team members, a lot of my friends and family, one of the biggest things that happens to people is they look at where they want to be, right? Mm-hmm. And they see this huge mountain they have to climb, and all of these different things. They don't see a pathway from here to there. And the biggest thing is taking that first step,
right,
and bringing it down into small attainable goals, small attainable wins that all add up to that big win, that big end goal at the very end. And that could take decades. It could take a long time.
Decades for sure.
Depends on what that goal or that strategy is. But you need to have, a goal daily, weekly, monthly, yearly to achieve that ultimate place that you want to end up being at.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because we do like to put, we hear that story of, okay, if your business isn't over the top successful within 5 years, it's not going to make it. And then we compare ourselves to that. But then, mm-hmm. You hear the stories of, well, Amazon didn't make its first profit until year 10.
Right.
And that car, what is the Tetris company?
Tesla.
There
you go.
9 years in,
mm-hmm.
9 years in
mm-hmm.
before they made their first profit. And it's like, okay, well, it's not always that way. Amazon, the most profitable company in the world, mm-hmm. didn't turn its first profit for 10 years.
No, I don't believe that there's any standard for success in the time it takes to get there, really. I mean, you can see people that overnight success that happens very quickly off of a viral video, and all of a sudden they have made all the right decisions prior to that to be ready for that leap off, and then it takes a decade sometimes, and then you talk about Amazon, one of the most successful companies that the world has ever seen.
So. And we don't see that behind the scenes, right? I think about Zoom. I mean, you just said having a company that was prepared, for the opportunity for success when we all went virtual. How would they ever possibly, it's been a joke that they were behind the whole thing. Big joke, total joke. We know this is a joke, because they were one of those companies that just went over the top success. They were at the right place at the right time. They had all their ducks in a row. And they fulfilled a need, a huge need that they probably saw coming down the pipeline eventually, but they didn't really know it was going to accelerate that fast. But they had been going for years prior to that. Who knows how many years before they really truly took off. But it's amazing. There is no timeline. So let's be clear about that. That's a little diverse there. But,
and success looks different to everyone as well. I mean,
there's a timeline in your strategy. You want to develop that timeline. We're going to talk about that. But you're not going to say, if it doesn't happen by this date, then I'm checking out. I think that's a big mistake.
There's a quote that comes to mind talking about that timeline from a man named Eric Thomas. He's a motivational speaker.
I know Eric.
I'm sure a lot of you,
we're buddies.
Yeah. A lot of
I know who he is. I've listened to.
He talks about it taking over 10 years for him to get his first bachelor's degree. And he said at the end of it, you know what it said? It said Eric Thomas, Bachelor of Arts. It didn't say it took him 10 years. It didn't matter if it takes you 2 years or 10. He achieved that goal at the end of it, and that's what mattered. And
that's exactly
it's a very good way to look at it, because it just, life's evolving, our goals are evolving, our situations evolve, things like COVID do happen, and so we have to have a viable strategy in place to be able to manage those changes that come our way. And that could mean adjusting timelines and things, but it's always about staying motivated, persistent, moving in the right direction.
And things change. I know you guys got some stuff coming up at the Y, we're keeping up with the times. I know we do My Curves on Demand, and you guys are now doing some type of Y.
So we actually just thank you very much to the Impact Central Illinois ladies there that approved our grant this year.
Woohoo! Those ladies are doing
shout out to them. They do
amazing
stuff over there. They give away a lot of money every year. But this year we were awarded the Impact Central Illinois grant to get our Y on the Fly program on.
Y on the Fly. What a great name.
Yeah, imagine a Y without walls. We're going to come to you. We're going to provide services to you where you live in your neighborhood. And we have a fantastic partnership with the Peoria Park District, who is going to be joining us in that venture with their Peoria Park District on the Go mobile. So
that is awesome.
It's going to be a great thing that we have going. Our test period are going to start in September with a full launch for next summer and spring.
So, strategy, right? Exactly. So those strategies need to include change.
And that's a 3-year strategy. That's something that we've evolved and adjusted
and you're going to have to pivot as it starts, right? You start and then all of a sudden you don't realize everything that's going to happen. Well, let's dive in.
Let's go.
Because this is, what we talked about, the article that we wrote at I've Decided this week is all about how to create a winning strategy. Right. And it just, we want to help people achieve their goals and dreams and want to give you all the pieces of the puzzle that you need for success. And so I think understanding how to create a strategy is so important.
Correct.
And you can see this written in all different ways. I mean, you could go out and Google how to write a strategy, but I took all the information and kind of put it in a bundle here that I hopefully is
much easier to digest than trying to find it.
Easier to digest, a little easier.
Exactly.
So they're really not in any particular order, but somewhat of an order, but analyze the situation. That's the first thing that we talk about. So when you're going to create a strategy, and this can be a personal goal. This could be a strategy to achieve a personal goal.
Yes.
It can be a strategy for a new piece of leg to your business.
Yes.
It can be a strategy for opening a business. I mean, it really can apply to anything, but the first thing is to analyze the situation.
Exactly.
What is your mission? Where do you want to go? Where are you now?
Right.
How do you feel? How's the environment right now?
Yeah. You have to see what your consumer wants and what their needs are and how to meet them where they're at. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, you know that very well with curves in your industry. And that consumer doesn't necessarily have to be a member of our organization. That consumer can be yourself as well. You have to be able to understand what the needs of the situation is and how to meet them where they're at. Because the biggest thing that I think a lot of situations and strategies fail is they try to have this big overarching goal they want to achieve and they just almost trying to fast forward to getting to that goal,
Right.
expecting themselves or their business to be light years ahead of where they realistically are. And they just got to take a step back real quick, analyze the situation, and make sure that they're making the proper strategy for what they're trying to do.
Yes, so true. I think I can attest to that.
Oh, yes.
And my life,
can attest to that.
I'm like, I don't ever do that. Fast forward, leap years ahead of where we are and want to be. But, I think that's so true. So just being honest with yourself.
100%.
About your status. Just exactly what you're
bluntly honest.
Yes.
You can't lie to yourself at all and be successful. You have to know exactly where you are at and be honest with yourself first.
Yep.
That is for sure.
One thing is when it comes to analyzing, sometimes you have to make some changes before you even begin.
Yes.
So before you even start the strategy, before you even take your first action step, you've got to just make sure that everything's as aligned as possible. Nothing's going to be perfect. But there could be some changes that need to take place before you even start.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most definitely. Like I said, this is the Why on the Fly program that you were just talking about. It's a perfect example of that. This is the third year we've gone for that grant funding. The first 2 years, we didn't get it.
Right.
The plan wasn't approved. So we had to go back to the drawing board, readjust the strategy. And ultimately, we got to a point where we actually lessened some things here, created a partnership over here to bring some more strength to that grant. And on that third time, here we are. We got that grant taken care of because of the adjustments we were willing to do. Go back and say, okay, we didn't put the best foot forward. How do we adjust that? And how do we change that and make it a better, more viable strategy?
Well, and I just think that is so cool too, that, experience, right? You got told no twice.
Yes.
And instead of throwing in the towel,
you have to be persistent.
Instead of throwing in the towel, you said, okay, we were weak in some areas. Let's go back and fix that and come back to the table.
Exactly.
That's a good point. Not necessarily about the analyzed situation, but it's still a very good point. The second thing we talked about was identify influencers. And, it doesn't matter what your goals and dreams are. It doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish. There are going to be outside influencers that are going to be good and bad.
Oh, yeah.
So trying to figure out what they are going to be, trying to say, okay, what could happen and how are we going to respond to that if it does? As much of that as you can get answered prior to moving forward.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. So, yeah, I think you make a good point with both good and bad information and influencers being out there, because that's the hard part of this, right? Is you want, especially when you're starting a new venture, when you're starting a new strategy or a new personal goal, you want to try to collect information. And I think it's a very good idea to get as much information as you can. But the really hard part about all of that is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And it's trying to sift through the good, viable information and the stuff that works for you, and then the stuff that kind of just is a little bit louder sometimes than the other stuff that may not work as well. And so that's really hard to identify that. And that comes in the form of information, people, and you can think of influencers as a social media person or an influencer as just someone who's a supporter or someone who's influencing your thought process of how you're looking at the situation.
A pothole in a street is an influencer.
Exactly. Most definitely.
I use
your day heavy.
I talk about as it relates to achieving your goals and dreams is like a trip, right? Like a journey.
Yes.
And so I use the analogy is what I'm trying to spit out here. The analogy of taking a road trip often when we talk about that. So when you're talking about influencers, if you're on a road trip, you could have a flat tire, a detour. You could accidentally miss your exit. Yep. You could have a pothole.
Yes.
And all of those things. And you can, add anything in there that you want that to be. You could run out of money. You could be applying for a loan that didn't get approved. You can all of a sudden get to the end of the year and owe more taxes than you thought.
Yes.
Those things just kind of come along.
Yep. And I think the biggest part about that is preparing as best as you can for those, trying to think ahead and say, okay, this might happen, and have an adjustment plan in place. But really the biggest thing about that is when that pothole gets in your way is how do you adjust moving forward? How do you recover from that flat tire? How do you recover from not being in the financial spot that you want to be in and keep your goal in mind? And that's where it goes all the way back to having a viable strategy in place, because if you do have a viable strategy, that pothole might stink, might be rough, but you can move past that. But you got a
spare tire in the back.
Exactly.
And if it pops your tire,
you thought about it already.
You already thought about it. You've already made sure that the spare tire is aired up and it's good to go in case you need
100%.
And again, like you said, we can't think of everything. That's impossible. But the more you can think of, the more you can be prepared for with those outside influences.
Preparation is key.
The possible obstacles, that preparation is key.
Most definitely.
And so identifying all of those things that could happen
as best as you can, and using people who are experts in the field. Lean on people. Be able to identify people who you can trust, people who are good influencers, and lean on that outside knowledge, because no one has access to anything. Everybody, there's not a lot of pathways you're going to take that no one's ever gone down before. So somebody's created that
nothing new under the sun. Right?
Somebody's created that road for you before. Follow that pathway as far as it can take you for your strategy.
Yes.
It's gonna have a right turn, gonna have a left turn, gonna split off a different way. But someone's been down that road before.
Yes.
So try to find that person, try to find that information, and learn from those mistakes. You don't have to fail your way through things that people have already done if you take the time to learn from what they've already done.
I know. Sometimes we just don't listen.
It's very hard.
I will never 10 years ago, I met with a local business person, very smart person that I should have listened to. And I shared my idea. And I think I got put off right away because they didn't really get what they were like. I've decided that's not the best name. And I was like, well, that's the whole point. And I was like so mad about that. So I didn't really listen to anything else. Right.
Yep.
But they said, and I said, we're going to have a conference. We're going to do it at the Civic Center, blah, blah, blah. And they said, why are you biting off more than you can chew? Start where you are. Go and just rent a small space at a hotel and just spend a few $100s and see how it goes. And I was like, no, we're going big, or we're going home. And, that first year I spent a fortune renting out the Civic Center, and we had 160 people show up.
Right.
Had I listened to someone who's been down the road before and said, he probably knows what he's talking about and I should really listen, I would have saved myself so much money.
Yeah, a lot of headaches too, I'm sure.
And could have used that for other things. But, sometimes we don't listen, but we get it on
It's okay. Well, it's a great example, because
that could be an outside influencer just not listening.
Exactly. And we've all done that. We've all been there. Everybody who's tried something has heard something and they stopped listening once they heard that off-putting thing that person said.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing for a lot of us to do from those outside influencers is just what I said. It's identifying that information you don't necessarily agree with, because very clearly I've decided it was a great name and worked out just fine. But then there were some other advice in there that was very good that you weren't ready to absorb because it put you off from the very beginning.
Right,
and that's a mistake we all make.
Yes, because I had this grandiose idea, this big idea. And, but it's just so funny how not listening sometimes can cause us, that can influence what's happening in our situation. And it can also influence our timeline, which, speaking of, the next thing is develop good timelines. You want to, it's like, again, I always use the analogy of the trips, because there's just nothing better when it comes to setting your goals and that success journey. You're taking a trip. You never know when you're going to come up on a traffic jam.
Exactly.
It's the same kind of thing, but you want to have an idea. If you're on a journey and you're taking a 24-hour trip, how far are you going to drive today before you stop? And then how far are you going to drive the rest of the way? So it's just creating those timelines. I'm sure you guys had
100%. Part of our strategic action plan is having firm deadlines that we're achieving small goals along the way, right? We have these very grandiose things that cover the span of anywhere from 1.5 years to 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. But we have checkpoints we need to hit every so often, depending on that goal. So we have this big grandiose thing where for example, one of the things we want to do is get a new camp location and have a different offsite that's not at the Y, and just expand our reach, be able to serve more people in the community. Well, there are steps we need to take prior to that.
Right.
And we have a list of those steps and the timeline to meet those steps to make sure that we're hitting everything that we need to know. And it's so important. Now, there are certain things like with timelines where that date can't change. I got to meet, it
has to happen by
this. It has to happen September 15th, and that's what we're doing. And you got to make it happen.
Like your tax deadline, for example.
Exactly.
I mean, it used to be the big April 15th, but now they moved it to the Monday. So, for years and years and years, April 15th was the deadline.
You knew it. You had to get there. But so that's the big thing. So I talk often about being willing to adjust the timeline, but the big thing about it is when you do have that firm deadline at the end, you need to be properly planning to make sure that timeline doesn't get adjusted.
Yeah, whatever
or prioritizing that. So this one needs to happen by September.
And you have to be at a certain place.
You need to take the steps to get there
by a certain time. Then you have to drive so far each day to make sure that you arrive at the time.
And part of it's holding yourself accountable, but
Yes.
part of it is there's simply just goals and standards that need to be turned in and met by certain times and dates that keep the situation viable, keep the situation sustainable.
Yes.
If we're not to this point by this date and time, then we're not going to be successful. And we have to identify those and create that timeline to make sure we get there.
And sometimes when you have a good timeline and then you realize, man, we're not getting the things done, then that's the time where you have to kind of reevaluate. Yes. Having good timelines can also let you know if you need to reevaluate the situations. Yeah. If you're not making certain crunch times, it's like, okay, why not? What's happening? What are we missing?
And that's usually exactly what it is. There is usually something you missed. And that could be as simple as you just weren't always aware of the situation as you thought, and that timeline is an unreasonable timeline. You're just not going to make that deadline because you just bit off a little bit more than you could chew.
My husband always says,
not going to quite get there.
Everything takes longer than you think it's going to take.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I always
Anytime I start a house project, it's always that way. So.
I always think that it should go a lot faster than it generally does.
And actually, that's one of the biggest things in my job is trying to guide my team through that timeline process, because I'm very fortunate to have a very good team, and they have grandiose ideas and they want to be successful. They want to see our Y be successful and serve our community as best as they can. But sometimes those dreams are I want to be here in 6 months.
Right.
And it's going to take 3 years to get
there. Right. And I think about that. I mean, obviously we help people live a healthy life as well. Yes. You guys are big into that.
Most definitely.
Most people come to the Y because they're looking to be healthier. It's the same thing when you set those goals for them when they join. It's like, you've got certain health goals that you can reach in a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, but sometimes it's going to take a year or 2 years or even 3 years.
I was just going to say that those fitness goals, and I worked in this world for quite some time. And as you well know, a lot of people want to see that 20, 30 pounds come off in a couple of weeks or something along those lines.
Right.
And we know realistically to change and create a more healthy lifestyle, that weight loss or that strength gain, that takes consistent time and commitment over the course of a long time before years. Years.
It takes years. I mean, you got to start and not be discouraged, but it's something that it does take time. Yep. And so realistic timelines, but good timelines. Yes. And I think you made a very valid point. And there are some things that have to happen by certain dates and times just to keep it viable. To keep it viable, you've got to reach certain, there's certain points you got to reach at certain times. So a good timeline is important for a winning strategy. And again, it helps you measure your success. You can see how you're doing by certain points, checkpoints. Okay. The other thing is define the impact. So what difference is it going to make, right? So your goals, your dreams, the things that you're doing, what impact are you guys going to make with Y on the Fly? Exactly. And even a better question, who are you going to impact? Exactly. Who is this person? How old are they? Is it male, female, between this age, that age? What target market are you going after? And I say this all the time. We all want to help everybody with everything. And while that might be true, we can. Yep. It's if you try to market to everybody and everything,
you're going to start somewhere. You have to start
I don't think
somewhere.
none of us have enough money to market to everybody and meet every need. So who are you going to impact the most, and how are you defining that?
A lot of these are so important, and I don't think that there's a huge weight above another. But the reason I would maybe define the impact as probably the most important step is because this is where the passion comes from. Okay. This is where the mission comes from. This is where what we do matters comes from. Yes. Right. And so and again, this could be a personal goal, because that matters too. That impact, that's what we're trying to achieve, right? So it matters too. But on that grander scale of that social impacts, for example, for a product like Y on the Fly, or for what you've done with I've Decided in the Curve Studio with all the people who come and work out, like that impact, that passion is what brings you in every day, right?
Right.
And so being able to identify that and create that passion for the people who are putting that strategy forward, the reason I say that's the most important is because without that passion, the rest of it doesn't happen.
That's true.
You don't think through the timeline. You don't look at your influencers. You don't analyze the situation properly. You just kind of think about it and you do your best. But if you're really passionate about it and you think about the influence and the impact it's going to create, that's where the rest of it matters so much more to the people that are trying to achieve those goals, where that focus stays.
Yes, I agree. And I even said that in here. It says it's one of the most important factors in accomplishing success. And I agree
100%.
with you. If there is one that's more important than the other, although I agree they're all pretty equal, but defining that impact, we call it being what difference does it make? Being a difference maker.
Exactly.
And you got to understand and be clear about that.
Yes. And
I think if you're, like you said, your personal goals, if you don't know, if you're like, well, if I accomplish this, I don't even know what difference it's going to make. How are you ever going to have the motivation to keep going?
3 days into working out, you're going to stop working out.
Yeah.
Because it's hard and there's more fun stuff to go do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so you have to have that impact defined. You have to know, because really that's at the end, that's the goal.
Yeah.
It really is. So what am I going to achieve for this? Where am I getting at the end of this process that I'm willing to struggle and suffer through?
Yes.
What am I achieving by doing that? And you have to have that clear and defined. And that has to be where your passion lies, because if it doesn't, it fails. Because it is hard. It's very hard to commit to yourself to go work out and be better every day. It's very hard to commit to having a brand new business and being a small business owner and trying to grow and to influence and to create a network of people. Like, none of that is easy. And if you don't have a passion for it, if you don't know the direction you're heading at the end of it, why would you keep doing it? You can't.
It is so hard.
There is only so much motivation that you can have without the passion.
Absolutely. I agree. And if it were easy, everyone would do it,
Exactly.
right? It's not easy. It's very hard. And you have to know the difference it's going to make.
You have to.
What difference are you going to make?
Exactly.
If you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, how is it going end a difference?
And that has to excite you at the end.
Yes.
Because
it's got to be something that excites you.
There's so much work between there and there that end goal has to be exciting, so that on those bad days, on those hard days, you're still willing to go and work for it. Because like I said, none of this is easy and none of it matters without knowing where you're heading.
Good. That's good stuff, Trey. Wow. All right. And then last and certainly not least, is communicating the plans.
Honestly, right? if we were going to rank them, that's probably number 2 after you define that impact. So let's be honest.
I know it's kind of hard. Communicate, define the impact. They're kind of equal there. But I said they don't call communication king for no reason.
It is so true.
There may not be anything more important than making sure, especially if you have a team,
yes,
that everybody on the team understands what the expectation is, clearly understands what the expectation is, and what their individual role is.
Exactly.
And, even if you're an individual person doing an individual goal for yourself, you got to communicate it to someone. Someone needs to be holding you accountable.
Well, and even to yourself,
why we do coaching.
Part of it is communicating to yourself and communicating to yourself in a positive manner. Having positive self-talk, having that motivation and that positive time to make sure that you're being honest with yourself.
Yes.
But being okay with where you're at and being willing to take the steps on that personal level to get to where it is. And like I said, I think it really comes down to, don't be down on yourself because you're not, oh man, by now I thought I'd be this far ahead. You can't. You have to have that's okay. I'm willing to do the work to get there. And that's where you have to be in there. So you have to have that positive self-talk and that communication with yourself.
That's true. Such a good point.
And then with your coaches as well. You have to have outside people who are even loved ones. If you're not a person who is going to go get a personal trainer or get a coach or whatever that may be, you have to have a friend. You have to have a workout partner. You have to have somebody who knows what you're encouraging you and you're talking to you about it, and at the very least can check in and say, "Hey, how is this going? Have you got to this point yet?" And then even on a larger scale, like you said, with having a team, that's one of the things in my job. But I have this team that I have, and we have, in the summertime, we're upwards of 130, 140 employees. And so I have to make sure that my communication is very concise and clear to my team so that their communication to the rest of their team and that trickle down doesn't get lost.
That's
so that we know that we're achieving our mission, we're being safe, we're providing a fun environment, and we're achieving the goals that we need to achieve and moving in that right direction. Without the communication, it all breaks down. People get frustrated, the support's not there, and those different kind of things. And so that's one of the fun parts and hard parts about the job is needing to be available to provide that support, to over communicate when needed, and be there to talk through a situation when they pop up, because things pop up. As I was just telling you, it was a busy morning this morning. Things happened today, and we had to be able to communicate well through those situations. And all those situations went extremely well because we practiced, because we've talked to each other and we've prepared for this.
You had a viable strategy.
Yes, exactly.
And at the end of the day, that's exactly what we're talking about. Is a winning strategy is the key to achieving whatever goals and dreams that you want to accomplish.
Most definitely.
And it's really laying out that expectation. It's simple.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. A strategy really truly is, what's the expectation? How are we going to get here? The little roadmap. I'm only halfway through it, but it is a fantastic book. It's Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. I think every human being should actually read it, because it truly, it's all about emotions.
Yes.
And she's a psychologist and she does all types of human research. And so it literally goes through every possible emotion, and it shares with you what brings about that emotion. Right. And it's literally kind of that expectation. Well, if this happens, then you can expect this is how you're going to feel.
Right.
And it brings such awareness to help you understand another human being. Like, if they are feeling this emotion, this is happening.
Yes.
And it is just, it gives me chills. Just really, the book is very, very good. And so, but the funny part is she talks about that. We were just talking about the communicating plans and that laying out that expectation. And and in her book, she says that when having unmet expectations is the biggest cause of emotional issues and arguments and relational problems.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just all about that. This was what we expected. And then that expectation didn't get met.
Well, and I think too, even going back and spinning back to our talk about communication and being a part of that, like, one of the mistakes I think we as people make is being disappointed by an expectation we didn't properly communicate.
Yeah,
right. And I think that's kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. Exactly. Because we expected this result through what we talked about, but we didn't truly clearly express that this was the expectation of how to get to that point. Right. And so that's one of those things where we have to be extremely intentional and very careful about how we communicate to our team members, to our support systems, to all those different people in our lives, to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure of that expectation, right? Because if we don't tell people this is what we expect, and then we just say, hey, try to do this, and then they do it, and they're like, oh, that's not how I wanted it to go. Yeah. Well, did you outline that strategy to make it so that it ended up where you wanted it to be, or did you yourself set yourself up for disappointment by not clearly communicating that expectation?
Yeah. The funny example that she gave was her family. They were going on vacation to Disney World. And at that time they had, I don't know how many children they have, a handful, like 3-4 kids, and they were all little.
That sounds like a lot of work.
And you just have one now.
I just have one, brand new.
Yeah, but brand new, 6 months old. Yes. That's a lot of work right there. Once they get a little older, it gets a little better. But that when they're babies, it's definitely hard work. But their kids were little, however many they had, and they were going to Disney World. And she said she had her bags packed, and she had her a bag that had like 5 or 6 books in it. And she's like, in my expectation, I was going to read these books. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to read books, And she's like, I had these books in the bag. She said her husband walked by and kind of glanced in the bag, and he was like, where are you going on vacation? And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, we're going to Disney World with our children. Like, what is your expectation about this vacation? And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to read 5 books while we're at Disney World with our children. And it's just like that one little thing, you can just have a little wrong turn in your expectation, because you just think vacation, read, not, we're going to Disney World with a bunch of kids. Anyway, it's just a good example. I thought.
Really is. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So that's a part of that communication. But those are some strategies, or those are some steps to have a winning strategy, I should say.
Most definitely.
And if you apply them and you do a good job laying out your roadmap from how you're going to get from here to there, of course, you're going to hit some bumps in the road, of course, but you're eventually going to get there, and your goals will be viable. Your dreams will stay alive. They will succeed if you follow the plans.
Yes,
create the plan, follow the plan, right?
Intentional, well thought out planning will get you anywhere you need to go, as long as you're willing to do the work to get there. Most
Absolutely.
definitely.
A good strategy will set you up for success.
Definitely.
Trey, I thought we did a good job.
I think it was great.
We did a good job. I did good filling in for Andy. I'm just not quite as tall.
No, not many of us.
I have to raise my seat up real high when I'm sitting next to him. But anyway, so yeah, not many people are, that's for sure. Anyway, so thank you so much. I hope that you'll come back.
Definitely.
You did an outstanding job
Thank you.
being the guest today. I know you said why on the
fly
is your big thing.
Couple things coming up. We got Why on the Fly. We're gonna do our official first launch this September. We started funding for that last September at our last summer soiree.
Yes.
And we promised it'd be launched by this soiree. So this year, this soiree happens on the 16th.
Oh, yeah. When is the soiree again?
September 16th.
September 16th.
Tickets are on sale. Save the date. Go to the Greater Peoria Family YMCA Facebook page.
It's such a fun.
It's all there. Yeah, it's a celebration.
It is such a fun night. It's out by the pool, and
we have live music. We have food. It's a good time.
It's like, what do you call it? You can dress up like like a soiree. It's like a beach party almost, with a pretty sundress or whatever.
Exactly. So,
beach pants and flip flops and cute sundresses.
It's a great time. It really is. My first one was last year that I got to be a part of, and I had a great time doing it. So we promised to launch by then.
Yep.
So we're going to have a launch starting this September. Thankfully, like I said, through our great partnership at the Park District and through those ladies over at Impact Central Illinois. And then I think the other biggest thing, for the first time, the Peoria YMCA is going to have fall, winter, and spring swim lessons as well.
Ooh.
So we have created a partnership with Easter Seals. So we're going to be able to serve our community after our outdoor pool closes, which is a beautiful outdoor pool.
I was going to say, nobody's going to be
nobody's going in there.
Pool.
Nobody's going in there. So we got a great partnership with Easter Seals down there. And so once our pool closes, we'll be serving down that way and doing some safety around water, lots of swim lessons, adult swim lessons.
Oh, that's
all
awesome.
Kinds of fun stuff. So be looking for us for that as well.
Good. Well, I decided we certainly appreciate our partnership with the Y.
Most definitely.
And thank you guys so much for being a part of what we're doing and trying to help our community and help people achieve their goals and dreams.
That's what we're here for, right?
I mean, it's been awesome. It's been a wonderful partnership. So we're grateful for that. So
yes. Thanks for having me on today.
Yes.
Appreciate
it. Anytime, Trey. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and look forward to, if you need to reach out to the Y and interested in any of these things that Trey's been talking about, the Greater Peoria YMCA, you can find them online. And easy to find here. They're out on Willow Knolls. A lot of people are like, where is the Y? I'm like, it's a beautiful campus out on Willow Knolls. It's like 5 minutes from my house.
And I'll just do a shameless membership push here. We are partnered with the Riverplex. So One Money gets you 2 different locations of over 40,000 square foot at each location of fitness, pool, weight area, youth sports, all kinds of different kind of stuff. So
2 for 1. That's
2
right.
2 for 1. You go to the Riverplex, you go to the YMCA, you're going to get some great service and have a great time, I promise.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys make it great, and we'll see you soon.